Wonderful. So welcome. I'll say what I just said again. But we are Katie Webster. I'm Katie Webster. This is my co-founder, Demi McConkey. And we're here because we had a dream to create something called the Coaching Gym. And when we say we, I mean Demi. And then she co-opted me into her dream because it was a really beautiful one. But it really came from a curiosity we both had about what really makes the difference when we think about serving another person, when we think about serving powerfully, when we think about really making a difference in another person's life through how we show up as coaches, but also just as human beings. And so it's prompted this beautiful exploration that's become the Coaching Gym. And Demi's going to tell you a little bit more about it. But if there's anything that I could convey to you right off the bat here as you step into our world, it's just how excited we are to be on this exploration and what a gift it feels like it is to be able to share it with all of you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think Katie, you said it so well, but a while back, for those of you in the coaching world, if you've ever read the book, The Prosperous Coach, Rich Lippman talks about, all you need to do to create clients is serve people more powerfully than anyone ever has. And I loved that and I hated that. There was something I loved about that and so basically I was just very confused about that. And at that current level of understanding and awareness that I had about what that meant at the time, I just took that and I made myself very busy and very broke. And then I just threw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm like, oh, I'm not doing that. But over time, I got more and more curious about what that could mean. And what I eventually realized is that inquiry for me serves me so much more powerfully to live as an open-ended curiosity that I plan to never answer. What does it mean to serve another person powerfully? What if I never actually answer that and I remain infinitely curious about that? What if there's more to see about that my entire life? And that felt good. But see that, but one of the best ways for me to see more about that is to explore that with more people who are interested in exploring it. So the Coaching Gym, the overarching umbrella of the gym is really built upon an infinite inquiry of like, what does it mean to serve other people powerfully? So for coaches, that's what we do. If you call yourself if you're a coach as a career, but as leaders, that's also what we do. As parents, that's what we do. As friends, that's what we do. As teachers, as another human being who loves another human being and wants to make their life better, that's just what we do. And so the Coaching Gym is a place that we get to practice, experiment, and get feedback around that. But today we launched the gym last month. So it has been going for a month and we have 4 practices a week, one a day, Monday through Friday. And we do a few practice coaching sessions with feedback. We have an exploration on Mondays and we do games on Wednesdays. And, what has been happening for me, and I know Katie, because we talk about this a lot, but there's been some surprise because we show up every day. We love it. Even though we could, delegate, we just love it so much. And one of the things that I've just noticed by showing up on a regular basis, we modeled this after a concept of Orange Theory. It's a workout at the gym that I started here in Salt Lake City that I started attending. And I realized that, if you want to get better at something, working out more frequently, shorter lengths of time is better, having it be part of your lifestyle. And so if I want to get better at serving people powerfully, why not practice it on a regular basis too? And get feedback, the kind of feedback that helps me understand how to practice better the next day. So as we've been showing up every day for this, I've been blown away by how much I've grown as a person and a coach. To be quite honest, I watched a video. We did some beta tests before we launched it. I watched a video of myself coaching somebody about 3 months ago, and I couldn't believe how much I've grown in 3 months as a result of just showing up. And what we thought we'd kind of share and talk about today is how we grow, how we get better at anything. Because, when I was sharing with Katie just before this call, I thought, and I don't know, I was laughing at, if you think about, I was sharing how there's a couple things in my life that I have nothing on the outcome of as I've gotten better. And those two things are cooking and plants. Okay. I have my bills aren't going to get paid by my cooking or my plants. I don't take anything in what I'm creating personally to mean anything about me. And when I first started playing with both of them, I was terrible. I love plants. I didn't grow up with them. I didn't, so when I had my first house and would buy plants, they would always die all the time. But that didn't mean anything about me. So I just buy new plants. Oh, they died again. It was going terrible for a while, but I didn't notice the terrible. I just was still curious. Now, I don't know when exactly or how I got better at it, but today, my plants talk to me today, you guys. I believe that they do, not with words, but they tell me when they need to be watered. I have a bit of a greenhouse going on. It's a little bit of a problem. I have so many plants because it's so fun. Okay. I can't even tell you. At some point I did watch a few YouTube videos about propagating and things if I didn't know something, but little by little, I just picked up on it. Same thing with cooking. I didn't have anything on the outcome of it. It didn't mean anything about me. I just experiment. Not all of them worked out great. Some of them were terrible, but I just kept playing and tinkering. Okay, now business is another story over here. Business pays my bills. And because my business, I especially used to identify my business with I used to think about it as me, because I'm a service provider, it's me on the line. So when things wouldn't go well or I'd get negative feedback, I just shut out. I clamp up. I have been an entrepreneur for 25 years. If I would have done business and entrepreneurship like I did plants and food, I would be one of the most badass businesswomen on the planet. But I didn't do it like that initially. I did it like I had a lot on it. And so the natural learning curve that we just, because we are the source of insight, because I wasn't interfering at all with the natural learning curve with food and plants, it was the most effortless evolution of mastery. I didn't even know it was happening. I wasn't even aware of it. Okay. Now with business, I would read about how to learn and study it. And I was just like constantly trying to make it happen. And when things didn't go the way that I wanted them to, I made a big ordeal about it and took many courses on how to make it not go that way and just got really busy minded. So I did a lot in a lot of ways, and I can see this upon reflection over time. A lot of ways I just interfered with the natural learning curve and my own intuitive, insightful discoveries when things don't go wrong or when things don't go the way that I want them to. Okay. Now, I'm really what's been really fun, Katie and I, we launched the coaching gym. We did not create the coaching gym to get rich off of. We created the coaching gym. That was one of the things that we had an insight early on. Let's not create a gym that gets us rich off of memberships. Let's create a gym that helps us get rich as a result of showing up and practicing just like everybody else. So in a way, we had nothing on the outcome. And so this is one of the first times in my entire career of business that I've created something that I'm getting to do it like plants and cooking. And the way it's going is just blowing my mind. It's just been so fun because it's, just a really silly, simple example, but the last free webinar we did last couple weeks ago, we only had two people show up for. In the past, I would have had a tizzy fit. If I had to pay my bills and meant something about me, I would have gotten in a, but I was like, isn't that interesting? Oh, I sent out a bunch of texts, but I did it this way. I'm like, huh, and the way they responded wasn't what I expected. Ah, isn't that? But what we did is we just got curious about that because it didn't mean anything about us and it didn't matter really. So we could just be curious. The way I was with food and plants, we were able to just be curious. And so the natural learning curve is I'm experiencing it very differently than anything I've ever experienced in business. And so that was sort of this like idea that we wanted to kind of play with today and explore because the other one of the things that the gym was really inspired by, and this was still when I was like doing business like it meant something about me. But I read this book by Cal Newport called Be So Good They Can't Ignore You. And in this book, he talks about a concept of deliberate practice. And he gives this example in the book where he and this musician, Jordan Vance, pick up a guitar about the same time and put in about the same amount of hours practicing it, roughly 10,000 hours. The author stays at hobby level with the guitar, whereas Jordan Vance goes on to be a professional musician, touring with celebrities, creating his own albums, and making a good living from playing guitar. But they both put in 10,000 hours. And like there's that, Malcolm Gladwell, like 10,000 hours to mastery, right? Well, it turns out it's not just 10,000 hours, it's how you spend those hours. See, the author was playing when he would try to challenge himself to play a new song, it was frustrating to him. He didn't like being in the discomfort of not knowing what to do. So he would go back to playing what he knew well and just played that over and over. Whereas Jordan Vance always worked with coaches and teachers who would challenge him. And he was known to play more challenging chords for hours and hours until he could get it right. And then he would get feedback from these coaches and mentors. He'd get feedback, he'd take the feedback, apply the feedback, and get feedback on that. See, Jordan Vance was approaching the guitar how I was approaching food and plants. Cal, the author, was approaching the guitar how I used to do business. See, if I was uncomfortable, if something didn't go well, or I didn't get to feel good about myself, it meant something about me, I would avoid it. I wouldn't do it again. I'd go back to doing what I could do well and stay in the feeling that I liked. Yeah, so like one of the things that I've come to realize is that in business, I mean, if you're an entrepreneur or whatever it is that you do does affect your lifestyle, you paying the bills and how you're seen in the world and how you're perceived by others and your reputation and all of that, which as an entrepreneur, all of that stuff is usually part of the gig. Your mind is gonna very likely get grabby when things don't go the way you want them to. It's just part of kind of it's a kind of a setup that's very likely to happen. Doesn't mean that it will. It's very likely. So the question then becomes, well, how can we be with those things in a way that we don't create the interference? In a way that we can move into the discomfort and the unknown and be a bit more curious with it, bit more like we are with things that we don't have attachment to the outcome. I mean, does that kind of inquiry or kind of quandary come up for you guys as it does for me? I love to pause and just hear what you're hearing, hear what's occurring to you. I'd just like to take a couple shares. What's kind of landing or or not landing?
Okay, I'll go. It's 100% landing with me because it's the control freak part of me that really likes to know ahead of time and have this plan. Um, and look at all the different ways it could go just so I could have, that you use the word outcome. And I always, had the pretend story that it was the process. And yes, in a way, a large part of it was, but I was still hung up on the outcome. And stepping into this unknown, that's something that I'm looking at squarely now. Right. And so it's really interesting what you mentioned, that the things that we put certain meanings to, we tend to be more wanting to know more of, before we step into them, and we act differently around it. At least I'll speak for myself. I found myself that when I really look at it, it's I act differently with things that I know versus the unknown.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, have any of you ever had something not go the way you hoped it would go in business? I mean, just like show of hands, am I alone here? Or life or business, when things don't go the way. Like, what's that like for you? Like, and I just would, the worst of it. Like when things, like for me, I remember the worst experience, Michaela, I referenced this in our call earlier today, but Michaela was a great support in my life when this happened. But I had a really big client and potential deal go south. And I didn't see it coming. But in the aftermath of it going south and then looking at how my blindness, like me not being willing to check in on things, really created it. Oh, wow, was I discouraged. And you know what? I honestly avoided creating for a while because I just didn't want to feel that again. I don't know if anybody's ever done that before.
Yes.
See, I never did that with plants and cooking. But with my business, I've let it stall me for years. Accumulation, probably if I really accumulated the time in the 25 years that I've been in business, probably 50% of the time has been stalling to try to not feel something that I didn't like feeling. And I just don't want to feel it again. If I really look.
I don't know about you, but I stuck um together credibility with it, that I had to know and deliver and assist and support and shape for credibility. Otherwise, it will.
100%, Amber, because here's where I like, especially like, for entrepreneurs and leaders in the world, we must, in order to like, take on clients and get into a position of such leadership, we have some kind of a reputation that we've built that we are such. We're an expert in our field, such that you can hire us and we can guarantee you this. Like part of it is that was a big part of mine. So if I'm the expert and I miss something, oh gosh, well, I can't sell that again. What happened to my product? My product is no longer what I was making it up to be. Right? Can anybody relate? Well, I want to share a story. This is a story from Dave Trott, The Power of Ignorance. And it's funny because I was looking for a story last night. I was wondering if the story might be kind of fun for today. And I was like, I love these books because they're just full of fun, short stories that are really cool. And he's a great storyteller. And this was the first one I opened to, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect for this. So I'm gonna read the story to you guys. It's a short story, but it's called Creativity is Whatever It Takes. 100 years ago, 3 out of every 4 babies born prematurely didn't survive. This wasn't in underdeveloped countries. This was in Europe and America. Doctors and nurses did try to save them, but there wasn't a lot they could do. The little babies weren't fully formed. They were tiny and undernourished. They couldn't even generate enough heat to warm themselves, so 75% of them died. The medical profession accepted that this was just the natural way because this is how it's always been. Except for Dr. Etienne Tarnier. He noticed that on farms, chicken eggs were being hatched by being kept warm. And in 1880, he had a colleague, Dr. Pierre Boudin, began trying the same thing on babies. They had boxes which would retain the heat with a glass top to let them in and a hot water bottle to keep the tiny bodies warm. They were inventing the incubator. They noticed that the survival rate of these premature babies was much higher. Obviously, the first thing to do was to get these incubators installed in hospitals. But none of the medical authorities were interested in such a silly, expensive gimmick. First, they knew it was quite natural for babies born too soon not to survive. Second, what possible connection could farms and chicken eggs have with humans? No medical establishment would entertain the idea. So another colleague, Dr. Martin Cooney, decided to bypass medical establishments. He made 6 incubators and took them to the 1896 World Exhibition in Berlin. Then he asked the Berlin Charity Hospital for 6 premature babies. They gave them to him as they were almost certain to die anyway. He hired nurses and exhibited the babies in the incubators to the public. The exhibition was called Cooney's Kinderschnattat. I don't know. Cooney's Child Hatchery in English. Much better pronouncing English. The public paid to see the tiny babies almost a quarter the size of normal babies. And against all medical predictions, all 6 babies grew into healthy infants. This gave Cooney the impetus he needed. He took his incubators to America, where just as many premature babies were dying. In 1901, he did the same thing at the Pan American exhibit in Buffalo, New York. In 1902, he did it again at the World's Fair. And in 1903, he moved his exhibition to Coney Island, to Dreamland, and to Luna Park. He knew people would happily pay 25 cents to see the cutest little babies in the world wrapped up snug and warm. And poor families were only too grateful to give their babies a chance to survive. Cooney's incubators exhibited to paying customers at Coney Island for the next 40 years. During that time, he saved 6,500 out of 8,000 premature baby lives. That's 85% survival rate, up from the 25% survival rate without the incubators. Eventually, the medical authorities saw sense, and today incubators are saving lives in hospitals worldwide. And because of those rebellious doctors, because they didn't listen to conventional thinking says you can't question people's authority and you can't question what has always been. But though, if they couldn't save lives in hospitals, they would save lives in fairgrounds, even if they had to charge people 25 cents at a time to see them do it. There's an old Chinese saying, those that say it can't be done shouldn't get in the way of those who are going to do it. There's so many things I love about this story. Like there's just so many things. One of the things that the thing that I just love the most, and I don't know if you guys picked up on this, but there was a lot of rejection and criticism that these doctors had to experience. They were told that they were silly. Like, you're bringing in farm equipment to a hospital. This is ridiculous. No medical establishment wants to be seen as like a farm. So there's all these preconceived ideas, and they had to like bump up against people's thinking about the way it is. There's a lot of in the story of somebody having an idea. Remember, we're the source of insight. And whenever there's a problem, whenever things are not going the way we want them to go, if we can just be open and curious, an idea will emerge. But we don't know if the idea is good or not until we try it, until we test it out. So here these guys had this idea, but they didn't know if it would work or not. And they were being rejected and being criticized for it. So some of the ways that I have been in business when I'm rejected and criticized, I have shut down. And I, eventually I come back to life. I just, eventually something happens. But what has been really fun and kind of this new in launching the coaching gym and doing it differently, a no doesn't mean the same thing it meant to me in the past. Just like with these doctors. So you keep kind of throwing things out, seeing what sticks. And if we don't have anything on the things that are no or fall off or like people don't like, then it's just kind of a form of feedback. And in that feedback, we can stay open and curious. Now, part of the story that we don't hear is there's just what we can know, and that's noticeable in the story is, there was a time when the doctor who had that first idea, Dr. Etienne, French, Etienne. There was a time he didn't know what to do. He didn't know what. And this incubator didn't exist before. But an idea emerged from something. So my question for all of us is, where do those ideas come from? An idea that has never been thought of before. Yeah, I kind of almost want to do a little bit of a breakout room so that, because I would love for you guys to kind of just noodle on this a little bit, this inquiry. And I would like to have you guys have a chance to have a discussion with somebody where you're just kind of noticing what your experience has been in your life of having ideas come from nothing. And really looking together, well, where does that come from? Katie, would you mind putting everybody in you'll be with one other person. Julie, are you able to be in a breakout room? I'm never sure when people go off camera if they, if they're.
So Demi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I'm on my phone doing this on my phone, and I am lost here. I've lost the screen. Anyway.
Okay.
I'm here, but I'm having issues.
Okay, Katie, why don't we keep Julie in the main room?
Okay, sounds good.
And then we'll do.
I totally was talking to myself on mute. I was saying, Julie, if the fastest way would be just for you to hang up and rejoin, because then your screen will pop up. I can walk you through the rest of it, but it would be faster for you to just hang up and join.
And why don't we do about 5 minutes in the breakout room? And what this is, it's just a an exploration with another person, to just be curious about, you know, what ideas have you had in your life that kind of came from the same place, like this Dr. Etienne, like an idea that came from nothing. You know, and if you think of, you can think about some of the things, maybe like whatever your examples are of things that you got really good at that you didn't even notice you got good at. Like my plants and cooking. What were those things in your life that you didn't even know that you were getting good at it? You just were interested in it and enjoyed playing with it. And then over time, all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're pretty good at it. You could look there. That, you know, good, fresh ideas coming from nothing is one of the most ordinary things that occurs in our life. But because of the ordinariness of it, sometimes it's invisible. And so just with your partner, you're just going to kind of be exploring and excavating some of the memories that you have in your own life of, you know, just ideas coming from nothing. But the question is, where do they come from?
So we've had a couple people just join us. Rosanna and Heather just popped in. So I just
from the
wanted,
beach. I love it.
yes, is at the actual beach with a beach background. So in case you just missed that as you were coming in, Rosanna and Heather, we're just gonna pop people into breakout rooms in pairs for 5 minutes. And the conversation is just gonna be around, like, what do you notice about ideas or inspiration that seems to come from nowhere, that seems to come out of the blue?
And Katie,
Demi.
Julie can probably be in a breakout room now, and we could leave
Yeah.
Rosanna and Heather in the main room and just kind of catch them up a little bit.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm just gonna have to pop you guys in, just take a second.
And as you guys are getting ready to go out to your breakout rooms, we'll pull you back in, but it usually will give you, you know, you're going to be automatically returned to the breakout room in 60 seconds. Just let that happen. You can click on it to come in early, but don't do that. You want to have that last 60 minutes with your partner. That'll be part of your 5 minutes. So just to give you a heads up on that. Does anybody have any questions about the exploration, except for Heather and Rosanna? You guys will stick around with us.
Okay, perfect. I think we're all set to go. All right, we'll send you off to your breakout rooms, and you can't do it wrong. Just have a conversation. See where it leads you. There we go.
Hey, hi guys.
Hola.
I'm gonna be right
Hi.
back. I just have to run. I'll be right back.
So I read this story just before we went in there. It's a Dave Trott story. It's really kind of fun. It's a story about like 100 years ago, 3 out of every 4 premature babies died. And this was like not in third world countries. This was in the US and Europe. The reason that they died is that they just were so little, they didn't have enough, they couldn't create enough body heat. So, and it was just accepted in the medical field at the time that that's what would happen. But this one doctor, Dr. Etienne, he noticed that on farms, the chickens were being hatched by being kept warm. So just if they could keep them warm, more of them would survive. And so he kind of created this like rudimentary contraption where he just put a box, a glass on top, and hot water bottles in it. And he noticed that so as he was experimenting with premature babies, their survival rate was much higher with just keeping them warm. So he thought the next obvious thing what to do is get these incubators installed in hospitals. But it was not accepted well because it was like a ridiculous thing. What do, humans have nothing to do with chickens. You're going to bring an element of the farm into the hospital. No hospital wanted to be, represented as that. So they told him no. But there was another colleague another doctor that decided to bypass the medical industry, and he brought these incubators to the 1996 World Exhibition in Berlin. And he had the hospital in Berlin asked him if they would donate 6 premature babies to be exhibited there. And they were more than happy because they thought the babies would die anyway. So they had these incubators, kept them warm. All 6 babies lived. So then the doctor was like, so he just started bringing incubators to world fairs of all over the world and for the next 40 years. And in 40 years, he saved like 6,500 babies out of 8,000, bringing survival rate up from 25% survival rate up to 75% survival rate. Eventually, the medical field caught on, but that was 40 years of saying, if the medical industry isn't going to do it, we'll take it to the fair, doing it however it works. And, but the inquiry that I, invited people to think about is like, before this guy had the idea to try the incubators like the farms, there was nothing. There was this accepted notion that, just 75% of premature babies die. But he had an idea. And what I shared is that I love it. What I personally love about the story is how he had to deal with rejection and criticism. They thought his idea was silly. They're like, it didn't have the prestige of a hospital, of a doctor that should have we're not farmers, we're doctors. But he kept going because he was on to something. But the question in the breakout rooms right now that people are exploring is like, where does an idea that's never existed before come from? So I'm curious what you guys would say about that. And like, like, well, and what's interesting to me too is I think about, the coaching gym is kind of one of those, is kind of my experience of an incubator, like kind of having this idea and just throwing it out there and like not really caring how it's received, but just wanting to kind of play with it. And when an idea like that comes for me in my life, I barely notice it. A lot of times it's not this big revelation. It's just this emergence, and then it's an awareness of it. So it can sometimes be hard to notice. Curious what your guys' experience is and what it's like for you.
It's like the most effortless thing. It's like, yeah, you don't figure it out. It just comes.
Yeah, I guess for me it's like I just I feel like I definitely notice it, but then I try to make it into something like a product. They're like, oh my gosh, this is an idea, like this needs to happen. And it's not like I necessarily do it, but it's like then my brain definitely goes into like, I would be more of this person to be like, okay, how do we get these babies in these incubators? To me, I find it really hard to just like have the idea. I mean, I do a lot of writing, so I'll definitely write it down. But I find it really hard not to want to act on it.
Is
Or
that, I mean, is that a bad thing? Does that seem like a bad thing? I mean, yeah, I'm confused.
I
Because
mean,
true,
it's
because
not a
me too.
bad thing, but there's only so many things you can act on before it becomes like you're acting on too many things. And I don't even know if that's anything. I think it's more like I just find it so inspirational, and my desire is always to like share it somehow.
Yeah.
Like it feels just like, oh my gosh, if everyone saw this, or like this is amazing. You
Yeah.
know, it's kind of like, imagine that guy where he was just like, everyone needs to know this might be possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, you don't want to keep it to yourself. Yeah.
I
Mhm.
think that's a part of like that, like it, so, and there's, for me, there's a definitely a difference of trying to drum up an idea from my thinking versus this emergence of an idea that comes from nothing. And when an idea comes from nothing for me, it's like it's packed with the motivation for action. It's like it's got all, it's like it's a toolkit, like everything's there. And but here's where I sometimes in the past, and we kind of talked about this, is like, so I'll usually take that initial action. But if the result of that action, if my mind doesn't like the result of that action, that's typically where I get into like busyness or convoluting it somehow. If I don't do that, it's it then it then I usually have another insight of what to do next that comes packed with the, all of the everything I need to take action. So it's kind of, for me, is when I mean, what I'm seeing more and more, it's 100% of the time, if there's a feeling I don't like in the result of my action, and I'm not aware of it, what I do to avoid that feeling creates a lot of busyness.
What I'm almost hearing in that is like when we get like a new idea and we get really excited and we think we need to action it right away. Like if I was to look at that in the context of the story that we just read, like, if he was like, well, I need this in the hospitals, and if and he just kept fighting to get it in the hospitals and they kept pushing back and he hit that wall, eventually he would burn out, right? But it's like when the idea is so fresh and new, it kind of comes with its own instruction manual that's only revealed in time. It's like, oh, you hit this wall, okay, and then it's like, well, what if we did that? What if we tried this? And it's kind of like getting quiet enough to listen to those clues that come encoded in it, instead of getting a really great idea from the ether and then using the thinking that you already have to try to bring it into the world.
To fit in
Yeah,
your
like
head.
that. Yeah, like the creating the impossible. Like that's the creating the impossible, right? Like, and actually this book that I've been reading about your dharma, like they say like your dharma, the journey to your dharma is your dharma. Like you don't figure out your dharma and then take the journey, like the journey is literally the dharma. And I think that's the same thing of like where, especially in something that comes from not the unknown, or just like comes from nothing. I think that's, I mean, in my experience, in my limited, well, actually, this is all I know how to do. As this is the only way I know how to create things, so I shouldn't say my limited. But it's like it is true. It's like the plan, or like I like, Katie, how you said like about burnout, because I actually just think that's why even like I was burning out before I came to Mexico, and like so many of my clients are burning out because they're really just trying to like figure out how to bring the inspiration into reality, but with like the thinking, that's not the thinking that will get you there. Your old thinking doesn't get you there. or something like that.
It's like the Einstein quote, like the thinking that got you here isn't the thinking that's going to get you there. It's like
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
curious about what is the thinking that comes along, like what's the new fresh thinking that I get with this new fresh insight.
Yeah, like come on, like now I need this, okay? Like need the upgrade of this.
I love it. It reminds me of something Michael Neal says, like ideas don't emerge fully baked. Like the
Mm,
cake doesn't, the idea to, the idea to bake a cake doesn't, it's not like it doesn't go like this and then we have a cake. We don't actually have magic wands in that sense of like, bibbidi bobbidi boo. But it's like, but what, and this is kind of what, like in this, today that, well, maybe I'll pause and say this with everybody.
sure.
Ooh, I love the beach.
All right, bringing it here, Heather. Cool. So I was just kind of, we were just talking in our little room how when ideas emerge from nothing, like it doesn't come, this is something Michael Neal talks about, ideas don't emerge fully baked.
Mm.
Yeah, so the idea to bake a cake, we can have the idea, but it doesn't come like a fully baked cake. But we are the source of inspiration that will like we can tap into the well within to guide us to how to bake the cake, to turn on the oven, to put it in, to like all of that. And what we're really kind of pointing to here, and I want to hear what you guys that kind of noticed in your breakout rooms. But the fact that what we're really pointing to here is that when you bake the cake, if it doesn't turn out the way you wanted it to, you're still the source of insight of what to do next. Whether it turns out the way you want or it doesn't. So I'd love to hear, what did, like anything occur to you fresh and new, or what did you guys see about this source of where ideas that have never been before, where you've never had the idea before, where does it come from?
I'll say something. For me, I was talking with my partner, and because I am a mother and I stay home and I get to do a lot of cooking and cleaning and all of that. But anyhow, so a lot of the inspiration that comes or ideas for me is love. It's because I care for my children. There is something inside me that tells me or guides me to what I need to do to either protect, support, help my kids grow. So that's what I came up. It's love.
And isn't it amazing, Lily, how you probably didn't read the manual on how to raise kids before you had them.
Nope.
And my guess is, being a mother too, it probably wasn't at all like what you thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it was.
There are a lot of things that happen that's like, I didn't know these kids were going to have such big feelings. And I don't know. I just thought my daughter was just going to love me the way I love her. Didn't go quite like that. But, we can find ourselves in these predicaments. And this is sort of what I'm pointing to here too, is that we can find ourselves in these predicaments of like, I didn't know it was going to go this way and I don't know what to do.
Mm.
One of my mentors says, I don't know is the gateway to everything.
Mm.
It's really what I want to kind of marinate in, because to the degree in which we know that, or to the degree in which we like that idea as a concept and it sounds good and it seems true, has a lot to do with how we're going to be in those places in our life, and especially the places in our life that matter to us, that we care about. Those places when things don't go our way and we don't know what to do.
Mhm.
If we doubt that a fresh idea, an idea that's never been thought of before, if we doubt, if we question that that's really going to come up for us in that moment, we're probably going to go to our head and try to manage the situation as best we can, given what we've experienced in the past. Like the doctors in that story.
Mhm.
It's just the way it is that 75% of preemies die. That's just like, look, I'm not going to bring farm equipment into my hospital. I'm not going to embarrass ourselves that way. But, and this is sort of what I want to kind of invite all of us to kind of like experiment and see a little bit more. Even if you've already seen something about this, there's more to see. But the more you can really kind of play with this and put it to the test in any area of your life, you can start to trust it. I really saw this when I saw that I wasn't seeing it. And the experience I told you about when everything went, you know, and I had a lot of stuff go wrong in my business and everything went south. I was working with an amazing coach at the time who was raising money for a documentary film that she and her husband were going to make. And they needed $2 million, and they already had $1 million of investors' money, but they were looking for 2 more investors at $500,000 each. And she was talking to this billionaire, and she left me a message about it that was really funny afterwards. She's like, "Why are billionaires so worried about money?" And she just it was really funny. So he wanted to invest. And she said she was new. She's like, "I was just thinking about it." A couple days later, she said, "You know, I really think we should turn him down." And the other investors and the partners in the project were like, "No, we're so close." She's like, "I just get some red flags. I think we should turn him down." So she did. When she was telling me the story, this is what she said to me. She said, "But Timmy, see, I don't need his money because I'm the source of insight. So I know that a fresh insight of where to raise money is just around the corner. And if the film, I'd really like to do the film. It's be a really fun project. I'd really like to have it get done. But if it doesn't, that's okay, because I'm the source of insight. Another idea for another film or another project, it will come." And she said, "The way I see it, the idea emerged from me. It's my job is to present it to this community. It's up to them whether they say yes or no. If they say no, that's okay, because I'm the source of insight." So I listened to her, and my jaw dropped. I was like, because what I was doing over here with this, contracting with this team, was I was not showing up like I was the source of insight.
Mm.
I was showing up like insight and the friendliness of the universe happened for other people in business and money. It happened for me in other ways. But I had to make sure that this contract happened. And by the way, I was going to crush it so well, because I was going to be able to write a book about it so that I would never have to worry about sales and marketing again, because I didn't really like doing it. See, I had to control all these things so that I wouldn't have to do and feel the things I didn't want to feel. That's what I thought. So I just compared how she was creating in the world and how I was creating in the world. And I was like, wow, that looks more fun. How do I do that? And I truthfully didn't know. But for whatever reason, that time, that was okay with me. And just looking back, I think that had a lot to do with how I saw more, because this was just a place where it's like, I saw a possibility for myself and I had no idea how to get there. But that put me into the space of the unknown, the gateway of everything. I'm curious what you guys are hearing for yourself. What's coming up for you?
Excuse me. That's yeah, I feel like I'm just living in the unknown because I literally don't have the answers to solve the problems that I have. And if I try to find the answer to solve a problem, it's so painful. Like it's so scary. And it feels like it will take everything that I have to make that happen when I actually have nothing. Like I don't have anything to make it happen. So I literally cannot push myself to make anything happen. And what I've seen for myself this week of really, because before I have been surrendering to the unknown, but what I've seen for myself about the unknown this week is that it's not like it's not like a wish. It's not actually a wish. It's like it's not like a wish in the sense of like, well, I sure hope the unknown gives me something, which I do. But it's actually more it's more beautiful than a solution because it's it's not actually a solution. It's a way of being. And I really liked that distinction between like kind of really like wish, like I know that the solutions will come from the unknown because it's the only place. But when I realized the solution isn't the solution, because it's really just, I don't really have the words for this, but because I've just been seeing it, but it's really more of like a way of being. And so maybe the way of being is the solution.
That makes a lot of sense to me, Heather. And I don't know if my brain's confused by it, which is why it makes sense to me, because I think that like that has been my experience, is that my brain has ideas about, and my brain, by the way, too, has wish lists for the unknown and the universe. It's like, yeah, it's like my brain does that. And if I'm less interested in that, like if I can get a little less interested in that and a bit more curious about what's in front of me, like that just intuitively orients you to the unknown. Because none of this, by the way, you can actually do by script. Because this is a very intuitive process. Getting into the unknown is just something that happens for us. Life will do that for us. All like a bazillion times, like over and over and over again, because that's just sort of the nature of life. We can just make up that we can predict it. We have minds that make up that it can be something other, right? And thinks that it needs others, and it makes up problems that need solutions. But my experience of like what I heard when you said, Heather, this is my experience, is that in that space of surrendering to that, whatever you want to call this other direction of looking or feeling, I was going to say 100% of the time. So let me just check if that's true. I think it is. Yeah, actually it is. 100% of the time, the problem dissolves. Now, there's still things to do. There's still things to respond to, but it doesn't look like a problem anymore. I don't know, Heather, how would you respond? What did you hear in that? Because
I see what I can resonate with that. I guess for me, I started to see like, because there's no solution, there's no problem, but like, it's not like, it's like, that's a really, it's like, I'm not there yet because it really feels like a big problem to me. Like my problem feels very big and unsolvable. And anybody I talk to also confirms that this is a very big problem. And it seems almost like a pipe dream that like somehow just being would solve this problem.
Mm.
And so like I've had some really, really flow states just like by the beach. And in this, like just being totally thrown out of my regular routine. And yeah, like I like how you said like 100% of the time, because like it goes beyond this like kind of like, okay, I've got to get myself into some sort of place, because I've also been kind of reading stuff that I'm really annoyed with, that just like keeps putting so much pressure on us to be aligned and like be in a certain place, to like have a certain vibration, to like have these solutions be like divined to us. Like I'm kind of annoyed of that right now, because I actually feel like that's still coming from this place of like not really believing, or not even really just understanding that insight from the unknown, it can literally come at any moment, and maybe that insight could be like, oh, this isn't actually the problem you think it is. Or maybe that insight can be like, oh, here's one step that you could do right now that helps you feel better about your problem. Or maybe that insight is like, oh, maybe the solution is just being. And all of that just feels great in the moment when it's coming, but then after it's still no solution.
Hmm.
So I think that, so anyways, this is just like the
love it.
last thing I'll say is like, so what I saw was just that I can't look to the unknown for the solution, because like the beingness that is embodied in, in the unknown, in a sense, will show me the solution or show me steps moment to moment. But as soon as I come out of that and try to turn it into a solution for this ginormous problem, I'm fucked. Like I lost the whole thing. That's all I got.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And thank you. And just to be very clear, even though I said 100% of the time that I go into that outer space, it dissolves, that does not mean that I don't experience life the same way that Heather does from time. When I am in a problem, like, and I've many in my life, when they're showing up in the way that they show up, I experience them the same way. And I love what Heather's saying, because yeah, if I try, and I have done this before, I have tried to take all this spiritual understanding that I know and tried to use it to manage my experience better. That's the opposite direction of what we're talking about here. Like trying to control, trying to change it, trying to continue being in the illusion that we can control life, that we can control our experience. It's just more of that, right? And there is this aspect to life. There is this thing inside of us that's reliable. That it's like, I don't know, for me, like, it's like, I've heard it said, it's like this built-in self-correcting mechanism. So when I first heard that built-in self-correcting mechanism, I'm like, how do I get there faster? How do I use this thing? Mine's broken right now. Like, how do I get, like, where's my reset button? You know, and that didn't help. But the more I see, the more I just let kind of life me as best I can, which sometimes is messy, sometimes is more graceful, sometimes is like, it just looks like what it looks. It looks 10,000 different ways in my world. But the more that I do that and see this thing inside of me that really does show up, it's not within my control how it shows up, by the way, but it does show up. Like, the more I see that and the more I can trust it, the trust for that has really increased over time for me. That's noticeable in my experience. And the more that I trust it, the more messy life can get for me, and it's not as big of a deal as it used to be. But that's really, and I think that's the thing that's really helping me in my life be able to experience the natural learning curve of whatever it is I'm doing, even when I have attachment to the outcome. I can still see things that I used to not be able to because I just didn't want to feel that. I don't know if any of that makes sense. Did any of that make sense for anybody? Katie, let me pass the baton to you. Katie usually does a really great job of taking what I'm trying to say and making it sound so much better.
Uh-oh, the pressure's on. But well, just as I was sitting and listening to both of you, what was really bubbling up for me, Heather, is like, you know, what if part of the kindness of universal mind is that it refuses to give us a solution to a problem that we've made up with our scary thinking? And that is the most ultimate kindness that can exist, because it refuses to collude with us, no matter how scary the thinking and no matter how real that scary thinking has made the problem look. And I heard in you this like you're seeing the clues, you know, it's like you're onto it. It still looks like a really real, really scary problem, but you're onto it, and like the gig's almost up for this problem. And the cool and crappy thing is that the minute you realize that that's not actually your problem, there'll be a new problem there, because that's how thinking works. It's like it always has to be brewing something in the background, and it always has to be also kind of having the awareness that it's maybe it's not such a big deal, but I don't know, it really looks like it, and it just feels like the invitation of life is to dance with the problems with a little bit more ease. And that story that you told Demi about the woman who was making the documentary, like that level of like, it's okay if this doesn't work out, there'll be something else, like that gorgeous detachment to knowing that even if something looks like it's the solution to your problem, when you hold that problem with lightness, like, yeah, it's a game I'm playing right now as a human, but it's not a real game. But it's a game I'm really playing. Like, and maybe I make the movie and maybe I don't, like maybe I solve the problem and maybe I don't. It doesn't make the problem any less created by scary thinking. And even if we could rest in that like feeling of where scary problems really come from, like 2% more of the time, I feel like the peace that we would experience is just so much more exponential. And that's what I love about how life works, is we don't have to figure stuff out. But when we see even a little bit more about something, the impact it has is just phenomenal, because we're exponential creatures. You know, we're playing an exponential game.
The bit of advice I wish I could have given myself 3 years ago is the value of patience. Because, and it really, I didn't have it 3 years ago because I hadn't seen how reliable, like, the intelligence of what we are is to pick up on things more than my mind is picking up on them. I hadn't yet seen that. And so I kept feeling like I wasn't getting it fast enough. Because I would have this really big insight, and then it was like, I'm stuck again though now. When am I going to get to the place that I don't have to feel this again? But, you know, that's just like that, you know, 3 years later of just wrestling with it. And like, that's what I think is so cool, to look back and see that even though I did it as human as I possibly did it, I created a shit ton of interference in seeing and being and getting it. It, over time, stuff just starts to click and make sense. If you're looking for it, you're going to see, but just little bits at a time add up. And I didn't, you know, and we're picking up on so much more than we're even aware of that we're picking up on in the experience. Like, that's what I love what you said, Heather. Our Dharma too, our Dharma is our Dharma. It just is. Everything, every moment, you know, the universe is just reflective for us. So generous. I love the way you put it, Katie. She always does such a great job of spinning my words into something more beautiful that makes more sense.
I know, it's just her genius. She just
It
said
is. It is.
perfectly, poetically, and I'm like.
What
The
if
worst is when-
what if the kindness of the design is that the universe doesn't give you a solution to your made up scary problem? Like, I love that. I love that. Like, yes.
The worst is when I'm with a client and they're like, can you say that again? And I'm like, no, I can't, I don't even know what I said. But you know, it's so cool just getting to be a part of this conversation. And you know, like, for Demi and I, having created the gym, and just like, it's been a month now since we really like opened it up super publicly and like made it a real thing. And just to see how all of this has come alive in us so much more, like how it's just taken root, and it looks so much truer. Like, you know, when you sit in a truth and you think, yeah, that's the truth. But then that truth has time to like bloom in you into a deeper feeling, into like a felt sense, into an experience. You know, that's really what I'm noticing right now is been the gifts of the gym. Like, it's given us this place where there's things that we were suspicious of, that were like, you know what, I think that could be the missing link, you know, in a lot of ways, to allowing ourselves to drop into this deeper understanding of life and to live it into our practices, whether that's coaching, whether that's relationships, like whatever that looks like. But it's given us like a playground and a laboratory to really kind of like take these things for test drives, stuff that we ruminate with in our head, and we think, oh, maybe it's like this and maybe it's like that. And you know, and we've been talking a lot about what really made the difference for us in our own development. And we're always coming back to this idea of feedback, whether we realized it was feedback or not, or whether we would have quantified it as feedback or not. There was this component of putting ourselves out there, letting it be witnessed, and allowing ourselves to receive what was coming back through that. And we started to kind of map out as we look back through our journeys. Well, here's the places where I really wasn't open to feedback, or I wasn't really like, I just wanted something and I didn't really want to know how it was going or how it was like, I wanted it so bad, you know? And here's the places where I was really open to feedback. And the thing I was so married to just dissolved in service to the thing that was wanting to be created instead. Or, you know, you got to be in the flow of creation instead of like the stickiness of thinking, like marrying an idea the minute it comes out of the oven, right? And so, you know, when we talk, like back to that Cal Newport story from the beginning, you know, like it really feels like we're just creating this beautiful incubator for ourselves and anyone who wants to join us to get into the flow of feedback, but in this way where we're not having to avoid it, because there's not the scary thinking around it that's like maybe lives out in the world of our perceptions and our ideas around what feedback has traditionally been for us. Or like many of us, maybe we've had a really crappy feedback experience when we were young, or maybe when we weren't so young. And it's just kind of, you know, can give you an allergy to what you think feedback is. But, you know, what we're really pointing to in the gym is the sacred feedback, this like divine feedback, this mirroring, this like the part of yourself that you almost can only witness through the eyes of another, but also in the cleanest possible way. And yeah, it's just it's been a gorgeous journey, Demi.
Mhm. Yeah, I love what you were saying about feedback, because when you were saying that, it's like, I think we've come to see that, you know, when we can really receive feedback, it's in fact, you know, the example that I was giving about like the cooking and plants versus business. See, I was able to receive feedback, but see, feedback is just, we do something and the universe responds. So feedback is just being able to see the response of the universe in a clear, clean way. In a way that we can take in the information and allow the source of insight that we are to like, well, this makes sense to do given that. Because we live in a world of human beings with separate realities who very often misunderstand where their experience is coming from, a lot of times we can misunderstand feedback for somebody projecting their hurt on us. And then a lot of us can think that feedback is just getting criticism. That's not feedback. So we want to be able to filter somebody's projecting their upset onto us. Like, how can we see but what's underneath it? What's there for us? And this is something that Katie and I have been really fun, because I've never really understood this, but one of the things that we're really learning in the launch of the gym is how to communicate with our audience, have a conversation. And the way that we do that is through feedback, but feedback comes in different forms. It comes with, you know, how many people show up given what we did. You know, it comes with like all these different things. And, you know, in the gym, we do deliberate practice of coaching and we give feedback. So there's a different way. But we talk a lot about how there's opinions. Like, so how do we learn to filter the opinions of others in a way that we can really use them as a reflection, as a mirror to see what is really here for us? And at some point, the more kind of adept we get to this, we can actually, I love people's opinions about me now, because I've learned to be able to filter that in a way so I can kind of see, I'm looking for the grain of truth. What's the grain of truth? What's here for me to see? And it's so interesting and fascinating. But see, the more that I can show up and respond to what's being reflected back to me in a way that I'm not trying to avoid feeling something. See, if I'm trying to avoid feeling something, my responding to what's in front of me is gonna be What's the word, Katie? It's gonna be like,
Sorry, I was doing some back end things and I
okay,
wasn't
like
paying
like, so if I'm,
Gonna be stressful.
yeah, it's
Heather,
not gonna be
word.
true. It's not gonna be true either. It's, oh, I know what it is. It's not common sense. It's not gonna be common sense. It's not gonna be simple. It's probably gonna be complicated. And it very likely, if I'm doing that with another person, it'll probably confuse them. And so that's in a lot of ways, that's how we get into conflict and confusion and like these things, is because we're responding to the feedback of life, to the like response of life in a filtered way that has us not do it in a simple common sense way, that has us not be straight with people.
Mm.
And so what we're doing is we're contributing to the confusion of reality. And if we're doing that with other people, we just kind of,
Mm.
if we're both doing that, things can get really confusing
Mhm.
and complicated and exhausting.
Mm.
Anyway, I want to open up for the last, 7 minutes that we have. I'd like to hear, what are you guys taking away from this? Like what are you seeing fresh and new? What is something maybe you want to take away and noodle on a bit, or
Mhm.
anything you want to share?
Well, can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this has been great for me because I feel as though I'm in the middle of a big, scary problem too. And that there's no solution to, so this has just given me a lot of good information to, really like noodle on, think about, realize that maybe it's not such a scary problem and it's just the universe showing up for me to, teach me something and show me what's next. Yeah.
That feels softer for you. I just felt the softening as you talked about that, Julie.
Yeah. Because I have been just like in fear, just this like paralyzing fear. And it'll be much nicer to think of it as an opportunity. Yeah. The kindness of the universe. Yeah.
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 The softer when we're in something that feels big and scary. And I get there too. Believe me, I do. Like I still will. Like I'm never gonna not have those moments, I'm pretty sure. But
Right.
it's really helpful to just notice where does softer take me?
Right. Right. And then just to quickly mention that last night we had this family dinner and we did this crazy game, and my niece just thought it up. And we all had to write down 2 words that described ourselves, but they had to be positive. And then we threw all these words in the middle of the table. And then my nephew drew each word and we had to guess we had to put that with a person. And it was so interesting because my one sister put in 2 words that were not positive. So that gave us the opportunity to tell her differently. Like, you're not controlling. You're what did we decide she was? I can't remember, but God, what an interesting game. And it could have turned into a huge family fight. But instead it was kind of a beautiful experience. So that could be a fun game to put out there.
Love it. I love
Fun
that.
game for the gym.
Yeah.
Milena.
I want to thank you all, and especially to Demi and Katie, and also Rosanna for inviting me. I've enjoyed this utterly. It's been a real pleasure. I've heard so much, I've seen so much, a little bit of a review of those things that you've heard, but somehow it just makes click, and it's like, oh wow, that's why. Suddenly it's like something opens, yeah, something that was there but you couldn't see, and now it's clear. So I had a very important insight about something I was struggling with, and I just want to say that I thank you so much for being here and for letting me be here with you this time. I need to go to another one now, so I'm gonna continue.
It was great having you. And let's say this too, we have a free week trial in the gym if you want. We do more of this. We also do some coaching sessions with feedback and games, and it's just a really lovely place. So we have a free week, and we also have a 30-day money back guarantee. So it's a really minimum, if you want to come and just try it and experience more of it, we can let you know more of the details of that too.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Anyone else have any last shares before we wrapped up? Amber.
I just find that the space that you guys have created, it's a really warm, inviting space where you can, we can all kind of just put our stuff in there and see what we see, right? And then there is no, it's not a stressful, pressure-filled place where we have to come up with answers. It's just more of a space that encourages and invites insight. So thank you for that.
Most welcome. Anyone else? Sure.
Matt, I felt like you were gonna say something.
Yeah, Matt. Let's force Matt to talk.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the idea of feedback, it's kind of an interesting one because 2 days ago when I was at work, I was having a discussion with one of the techs that works for me, and you don't. You get working at work and you go. It's really high stress and really high volume, and you don't really think about things. But what he mentioned to me was that I'm kind of seen as a rock there that just naturally comes up with solutions on the spot. And I don't really see myself as that. I just, I take the hits as they come in, and I try to keep them away from the team because the team needs to work and not stress about random stuff that isn't really important in the end. And I don't know, solutions. I don't know. It's just one of those things. Is the feedback thing that we're talking about here, and going to there, just kind of it's making my brain want to say, what do I do with this? And I think I know enough now not to go there. So that's what I'm thinking.
So cool.
Wonderful. Thanks, Matt. Anyone else? Right.
I want to know how we get where Heather is. Unknown, get me there.
Plane ticket.
It's funny because this is not obvious. This is obviously a Zoom background because I'm in like a co-working space that I have to leave this room right now. But this is actually where I am.
That's what I know. That's what you mentioned. So yeah. Oh, well, thank you guys so much for showing up with open minds and open hearts, and just, I just think I think the thing of feedback too, as I'm reflecting too, I have to tell you, it's only been recently that I really love feedback, and I really see the value of it. I have been more fearful of it in most of my life, but I'm even seeing more new about this. It's like, wow, feedback is just everywhere. It's in everything. And it's so kind if I can consider that.
Well, and we're gonna do 2 of these free workouts every month because we want, like, this is just like we said, this is something Demi and I are passionate about. So we just want to keep building this community. Members can come to they can come to as many of these as you want, whether you're a member of the gym or not a member of the gym. But our next 2 are going to be March 13th at 5 p.m. Pacific, which is a Wednesday. And then 2 weeks from then, March 28th on a Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific. So if you attended this one, we'll send you with the information for the future ones as well. And we'll
You're
also send
welcome.
you,
Yeah, so go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
oh, we'll also send you a link so that you can get a free week trial in the gym if you want to come check it out.
And you're welcome to invite anybody to, you can share the link for the free ones. There's no limit to how many free ones you can attend. We're doing that to, one, give people a taste of the gym, but also if the membership doesn't make sense for any reason, there's at least a couple of these a month that people can attend with, you know, for any reason. All right, you guys have a great rest of your day. We'd love to hear from you if any insights occur too. You know, don't hesitate to reach out. It's fun to keep the conversations going.
Thanks,
Thank
Anne. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
great week.
Bye. It's great
Bye.
seeing you, Matt.
Great
And
seeing you.
always great seeing Lily, Julie. So great
Bye.
seeing you guys.